Sean DeLauder. Cut.
Bill. God. We'll edit
Sean
that.
DeLauder. Sean DeLauder joins me today. Welcome, Sean. Good to see you.
Thank you, Bill. Do you prefer Bill, Billy, William, Dr. Lawrence?
I use all of them. I'm very creative with my name. Yeah, Bill is fine in this situation.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I call you Dr. Lawrence, I'll feel like I'm in an appointment or something.
Yeah, that's not good. They don't want to feel like that. And Billy is kind of my family name. You know, people that have known me the longest, and I was Billy as a kid, and I think I made it to Billy until I was maybe 25, and then
But Bill
then I
for me
became
until
I
I have a
became
couple
Bill.
more of
Yeah.
these. Yeah. Then I can call you Billy.
Okay, yeah. Nice. Well, thanks for coming in today. What, how's everything going with the writing?
Everything is going really well. I'm starting the last book in my trilogy, which is actually the first book of the three books, and it's different for every single book. This one, I mean, it's hard for me to describe a process because I don't really have a process. I actually had the idea for this book in my head for years, but I couldn't start it because I was working on the other books or some other project. But this book I started writing, and it was like I can't start this story in the beginning because I that's not the point in a character where I want to take my understanding from. So I had to start it literally. I started the book in the middle and I'm working outward in both directions, which I guess is fitting for this trilogy because this trilogy I wrote the second book, then I wrote the third book, and now I'm writing the first book. So I guess technically that does fit a pattern for this series, if not just writing in general for me.
Well, I think a lot of writers do that. They go back and there's a prequel. You know, we've seen that so many times. It works well. So the least envied is book two, right?
Yes.
So the least envied. This was the first one you wrote in the trilogy.
Yes.
And what year was this one published?
Gosh,
It was
2014. Ooh, that's a long time ago.
14. Yep,
Yeah.
14. Yeah, yep. So this is the only one I have in print. I read part three as an ebook. I got to get a hard copy
Yes,
version
you
of
do.
that.
Several,
Yes,
several
nice,
times.
nice to have that. So and so book three came out when? How many years later did you?
That was 2 years ago, 2022, I think. 2021,
Yeah,
22.
recently. Yeah.
I think is right around the end of the pandemic. I'm not sure.
And they're both really long books. So this is a massive story that you're telling here.
It is, yeah. It's a post-apocalyptic kind of, and again, we talked about this beforehand. I want to say magical realism, but that's like a South American term, and I can't think of what you might call it off the top of my head. But an injection of fantastical elements into real world scenarios. But I mean, this book has the series mashes up a whole bunch of different genres. Like there's sci-fi, there's fantasy. Okay, not a whole bunch, but two, at least two, and mysticism too, because there's a almost a reference to divine beings, and they interact with the characters, but they don't really take action. They aren't involved. They just attempt to influence people. So yeah, so three genres maybe.
Nice, nice, nice to mix it up. Yeah,
It,
it's
it
good.
is.
A
I'm
lot of
not very
appeal.
good at sticking to just one thing.
Yeah, yeah. And you get kind of boxed into one genre too. I mean,
Right. And that's I mean, that's probably good if you want to focus on one genre and, point your market in that direction, but I'm not terribly good at, like, again, sticking to one thing. That's not where my interests lie. I'm all over the place.
nice. That's good. That's good to be open to that. If we rewind, go back to your childhood, were you a big reader and did you start writing
Oh,
then? And
I didn't take writing seriously when I was a kid, but I did write a lot. I mean, wrote my first story, air quotes, when I was like 7. Um, and my mom sent it into a writing, like a local writing contest, and they invited me to um, the University of Toledo. I'm from the Toledo area, and there was like a writing workshop for kids, um, and it was incredibly boring. We were just we were sitting in the classroom discussing all these writing techniques. I was just like, oh, I just want to write something, you know? I mean, there was an instructive way about it that I just didn't enjoy. But I mean, I didn't come back to writing on a larger scale until I was in high school. I was sitting in class. It was free time. I had no homework to do. I'm like, what am I going to do with myself? I'm so bored here. I don't have a book or anything to read. So I was just like, I'm going to write a story. And I did. I mean, it was the foundation for The Least Envied of all things. Yeah. It
In
was
high school.
terrible.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah. So that book was in a long time in developing. But yeah, I mean, and then I actually started at the University of Toledo for pharmacy and did not enjoy that. It was a topic that my parents encouraged me to go into. And I went there for a year and a half. I did poorly just because I just left high school. It's all out of sorts, completely unprepared for the college lifestyle. Um, just thrust it. I'm not a terribly I'm a friendly person, but I'm not like an outgoing person. I'm not going to go up and talk to somebody I don't know. So being put in that college situation where I don't know anybody was really uncomfortable for me. So I went there for a year, did not do well, and I took a semester off just to like regather myself, and I reapplied at Bowling Green State University for journalism. And I don't know what happened in the registration process, but I got my acceptance back and they told me, congratulations, you are now in the school for uh, um, the English School for Journalism and Creative Writing. And I was like, creative writing? I did not sign up for that. But, I was like, fine, I'm going to go with it. I need to get back into school. I took a bunch of introductory creative writing classes and I was like, wow, this is it. This is what I want to do. I'm going to continue taking journalism so I can get a job. Not that you can't get a job in creative writing somewhere or the liberal arts, but that was my mindset back then. I was like, I need to have something to support what I actually want to do, and that's write stories. And here we are today.
And that's it. Yeah. What a history there. That's great.
Yeah, I actually had to go back to school again because I didn't enjoy journalism and I went for, of all things, technical writing because I don't know, I think that speaks to my insular nature. I mean, I don't my current job, I write training for a safety company. And I mean, I don't have much oversight at all. They tell me what they want written. I go out and find all the material, I put it together, I have a course, and I send it back out to them. So, I mean, it's
Wow.
very independent, and I really like that. Not that I don't like people. I like people. It's just that I don't initially there's like a an acclimation stage I have to go through to get used to people. Not you, of course. You were immediately affable and agreeable and
Yeah.
very easy to speak with.
You like your space though. That's good.
I do like my
Yeah.
space. Like
Yeah.
this office, for example, my wife has her own office and she wanted me to finish the basement. So I finished the basement, and naturally my office is, I mean, I this is like 15 feet long and 10 feet wall. I got like a wall of guitars behind me. I have
Nice.
work computers over there. I have my own here. I have a 3D printer over here. So, but not to get off topic,
Is that where you do a lot of your writing?
which is funny because I don't. I mean, I'm all over
Okay.
the place. I will sit down on my laptop downstairs. I'll write in bed. I'll write on. One of the things, if I don't necessarily believe in writer's block. I just sort of believe in, you know, needing to change the venue in order to switch things up. So I'll write on paper, I'll write on the computer, I'll scribble on napkins, and eventually I'll have so much junk piled up that I'm like, oh, I can put this into a story.
Nice, nice. That's a good process. Yeah.
Well, it's definitely a process.
I think we all work a little bit like that, where yeah, it's little bits and pieces, and it takes
Yeah,
time. I'm back and forth. I'll do poetry for a while. That kind of brings me out of the fiction, and then I
right.
go
Yes.
back into fiction.
It's
Yeah.
it's nice to switch gears in order to refresh things. You know, you come back to something and you've got a better eye for it, or not necessarily a better eye for it, but like a different perspective, because you've changed a little bit. Whatever minor degree it is, you've got like a slightly different look at it. You can take it in the new direction that it needs to go.
So you've been doing the technical writing for a while as full-time work. At what point did you decide it was time to put out your stories and publish them to the world?
I think I had been writing for a long time. I graduated in the early 2000s, and I had sent out some short stories. I'd gotten a couple published, but it wasn't with the regularity that I would have liked. So I started working. I obviously had the idea for the least envied. I wrote that out. It was not good. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write a different story. And that ended up being Speaker for the Trees. And that was, I mean, I'd had that story written for a while before I actually decided to self-publish it. And I'd submitted to a whole bunch of different places, but then you run into the sort of catch 22 that is publishing, and continues now, but it's just a different kind of animal. That back then, I mean, if you wanted to get something published and it wasn't like a mind breaking idea that caught the attention of a publisher or an agent within the first paragraph, I mean, you needed to have an established record of publications. I mean, you had to be somebody who showed up in publications on the regular. So you had what they wanted was some kind of built-in audience, I'm sure, or a reputation for being readable. I mean, that really hasn't changed now. I found that publishers want you, I'm sure you've experienced this too. I mean, they want you to have the pre-established internet following of people. They want to know that they have people that they can market your book to immediately. Um, I just read an article the other day saying, you know, publishers tend to target people with big audiences, which is why they will publish people like actors and actresses or celebrities with, and they will get fully behind their books and publicize them because they know they have that audience out there and people are going to buy them. Whereas other authors, such as myself, they might not put as much money behind, or they might expect you to do more of the work yourself. And more my realization is, do I want to do traditional publishing? And the answer is no, because I'm just going to end up doing all the work myself anyway. I mean, I'm not, if any publishers are like listening to this and they're like, we're not going to publish him now. I mean, if you still want to come and talk to me, I'd be okay with that. I definitely give you my ear.
Yeah, I see that too, though. Yeah, it's one of the first things they look. The agents are just so concerned about your social media following. I read another thing just the other day that shows that yeah, the publishers are like you were saying, they put a lot of their money spent on advances
Yeah,
to
yeah,
these celebrities and people with big followings. And then we find out that it doesn't even pay off. Like they're investing more money in these books that aren't really returning. Some of these high profile people are not actually selling books, even though they
yeah.
have large followings.
I mean, I don't care how popular you are. I mean, maybe someone that's hugely popular, like a Michael Jackson or a Taylor Swift. I mean, she might put out a bunch of books, but I mean, I'm not I'm not gonna read. I like Barack Obama, but I didn't read his book. Sorry, sorry, Mr. Obama.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Just because you like the person doesn't mean you buy their book. Yeah,
right, exactly. Except in your case, Bill, I definitely buy your book
oh,
and read
thank
it
you.
no matter what.
I appreciate it.
But yeah, I mean, that was the my impression when I was younger was I find an agent is going to help me promote my book and help me do all these things and schedule all these events for me, not expect me to have already done all these things myself. I mean, they're the bridge to the publishing world, and I mean they still are, I'm sure, but I just did not expect to have to do so much of the work myself. And if I'm going to do so much of the work myself, what is the point of the intermediary?
Yeah, and then they take a cut of what you make, I mean,
Exactly.
you might sell a little bit more, but
Right.
in the end, but doesn't matter then if you're cut out of your own profits.
That, and I don't, there's also, I mean, if you have someone with that kind of oversight, maybe you get an editor who improves your work, but I'm the sort of person who gets an editor and they want to make changes, and I'm like, no, hands off.
Yeah, yeah.
If you want to make word level changes, or if I've missed a period or used a word that makes no sense there, please bring it to my attention. But otherwise, no, don't change the arc of my novel. Because I've read popular novels, and at the end of their at the author's note, they'll say something like, well, I wanted to do this, but they asked me
Oh,
to do this, and I don't like editors. Piers Anthony was big about that, and he was someone I read a lot as a kid. Probably wouldn't do so well nowadays, but yeah, he mentioned editors being akin to the devil, and it's like, oh, maybe that shaped my opinion of them, and I'm sorry, editors. But yeah, that's kind of the I want them to stay in like a proofreading sphere and to stay
yeah,
in that
yeah.
one.
Nice. Well, so other than the trilogy, was it The Speaker of the Trees? Was that
That
your first?
that was the first one I published. That was the one I shopped around and tried to
Okay.
get people interested in. And the closest I usually ever get was, this is a good idea, but it's not for us. And I got it so often. I was like, is this just a form letter? Is this like a variant of a form letter? But one of my favorites, and I don't think it was for this one in particular, but it's representative of my entire style. I got a rejection. It's my favorite rejection of all time. It said, "Sorry, this isn't for us. Um, humor and sci-fi don't go together. We don't know why." And I was just like flabbergasted. I was like, "What are
Wow.
you talking about? They don't go together." I mean, have you ever read Douglas Adams? I mean, that is like the pinnacle of
Yeah.
sci-fi and
There's a
humor.
lot of sci-fi out there that
There is.
award-winning sci-fi that has humor in it.
There
Yeah.
is no genre that you cannot inject humor into. None.
Mhm.
I mean, somewhere out there is going to be like, oh, really? Well, what about this? And they'll find a perfect example. But I mean, I don't believe that. That was just tell me you don't want, you don't like the story.
It's not for you. Yeah.
Just give me
mean,
a full
that's a shame
rejection.
because this is a very creative story. It's so original. I mean, you don't see stuff out there like that in the commercial presses.
Right. And you kind of have to venture into the independent world to, not to say that there's no creative content out there in the standard book, rather there is, but I mean, it's all very planned. It's all directed at a very specific um group of people, their interests. And I mean, it works. I mean, that's the way you catch the broadest amount of people. I like, for example, my wife has, I tried for years to get her, because I have an extensive library. I tried for years to get her to write a book or read a book. And I'd offer her something like a mystery novel or fantasy or sci-fi or anything. And she like never ever read anything. And then she stumbled across I think Sarah Moss, and there it's very, I think it's fantasy romance. And I, apologies to Sarah Moss, I think I referred to it as like elf porn. It's just like, no, Sean, it's fairy porn. It's just like, but I mean, not to be dismissive of that. I mean, that's got a really huge following. It's a really popular genre. It's just not my genre. So, you
I
know,
bet.
I mean, I did attempt to poke into that genre with Sex Assassins, but again, that might fall a little too far outside that particular sphere.
Well, so this one was 2012, and I know there's different covers, right? The
Yeah, I
same
just
edition though, same the text has.
actually have actually have another cover. Yeah, I had that. A friend of mine did that original cover, and it was I really liked that cover. But I was like, it's been over a decade.
Yeah,
I want to put something new on it. And
nice.
Andy Catling, who's on Instagram and a whole bunch of he does book covers. He does kids books mostly. But I saw him a couple of years ago because I was looking for a cover for a hero, and he had a style that I really, really, really liked. But he was busy at the time, and then out of nowhere, he emails me like at the beginning of the year. He's like, "Well, I'm available now. Do you have any work for me?" And I was like, "Oh no, I got to find something so I can use him." And I was like, "You know what? This is due for an update." So he went ahead and did that cover for me, and I really, really, really like it.
Nice. So the text is the same though.
Yeah, the
Is
text is unchanged, apart from a
okay.
couple spelling errors that I
Oh
found.
yeah. Okay. Little touch ups. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Are you a fan of Franz Kafka at all? Have you ever read any of his? It
I
reminded me
obviously
of, I mean,
yeah, I mean, I've obviously read Metamorphosis. I
yeah.
don't know if I've read anything other than that, but when I read that in college, I was like, wow, this is it. This is the stuff. That and oh, what's it called? You'll have to edit my long pause out here. What's it Voltaire. Voltaire did what was that book? Candide. That's what it was.
Oh yeah.
About the
Yeah.
internet. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love Candide. Candide was really big for me, and Annie Prowl was very good. I love the shipping news. I think
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
we had it. It was in a creative writing class, and he would be up there talking to us. Well, it wouldn't be. It wasn't necessarily a creative. It was more like a round table that we did, and he would be our teacher would be talking about different stories and stuff, and I'd have my book under the table and I'm reading it. So yeah, I really enjoyed Prowl.
Yeah, that was a great book. That was big in the 90s and the
It
early 2000s. It was
it was huge, and I
yeah.
really really liked it. That was the first. It was one of the first books I got assigned that I really really liked.
Nice, nice. Of gods, it's of gods and men who would be gods.
Yes,
2012, a collection of four stories, right?
yes, and those were
Was that
actually
was that second? Published second?
it was, but it was again it was that follows my short story publishing pattern where I'll have a bunch of short stories. I don't know what to do with them, so I'll just throw them into a book and publish them, and so I can like move on. But these are stories that actually had published around. I think all of the everything but the toasted cheese published ones. I think that one's still around somewhere. I think they're strictly internet, but all the others that got published, they're defunct. You can't find them
Yeah, that
anywhere.
happens a lot, really.
But my first publication ever is in there, and it's the first story in there, and it's about the creation, essentially. The creation of everything. It's actually called Everything. And three creatures who were like born into that world, and their whole purpose is to like discover and name everything. And of course they all get into an argument over what to call things and then end up destroying it. So
I remember that one. Yeah, I remember that one. I have that one in ebook. Is that available on paperback?
no, that one's
No.
strictly I
Okay.
have not print.
Thanks.
It's so short. It's
Yeah.
almost not worth printing it out, putting in
Okay.
print. It'd almost be like a blue book.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I
thin
don't know if there'd
collection, just a
be
quick collection of your earliest
yeah, I don't know if there'd be
stories.
enough room for a spine or not for a binding like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, after Millennium Man came a few years later, right? And
Yep.
this is volume one, The Confessor. Does that mean there'll be a volume two? Any
I
chance of
mean,
a sequel here?
I hope so. I mean, I plan on it. I have ideas for sequels and stuff. It's just that I keep doing other things instead. But I really like that character of Thomas who has lived for 1,000 years or
1,000
so.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I mean, that was the plan was to, come into the story at different points during his lifetime because his gimmick is that he can remember everything. And the problem with he that people found with humanity is you forget what's happened before and you end up repeating the same mistakes over and over and over and over again. So in a perfect world, he was supposed to be around to guide people, back towards, hey, we've done this before. This is what's happened. Unfortunately, a a world destroying event occurs and the world is wiped out and it essentially has to start over. So there's no form of mass communication between people. So he's got to go around from like culture to culture and reestablish it. And this book is all about one of his attempts as he's getting older and closer to his expiration date, as it were.
Yeah, another original idea. I mean, I've never seen something like that. I mean, it makes for a great movie. I mean, there's so many things you could do
Oh
with it.
yeah, say that louder.
Is this the one that you have the idea for the graphic novel that was?
Yes. I wanted to publish that as a graphic novel initially. It was my wife's idea. She read the original short version of that I wrote. She's like, "This would be a really good short not or a graphic novel." And I was like, "You know what? Yeah, that's a good idea." So I
Yeah.
wrote it out. I wrote out the first few chapters in uh format for someone to like ink it up and everything, draw it up and stuff.
Wow.
But the problem was I couldn't market it. I couldn't get it out to anybody. Didn't have a reputation in that field. Couldn't find an illustrator. If I found an illustrator, I mean,
Would you go with it if you found somebody?
if I did, but the problem there is I mean, it's hundreds of dollars just to have a cover drawn. So I can't
Ah,
imagine what
yeah,
it would
yeah.
be like to pay somebody to do. I mean, that first book alone would have to be several issues because it's
So they would split it up into, they wouldn't do a
oh
full
yeah.
book. They would split it into issues. Like,
Yeah, by necessity, I think if you wanted to have individual, yeah, issues and maybe an omnibus later that would end up being about the same size, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that was the big. I keep running into the same obstacles, and I thought to myself, you know what? If only I could draw, this would be less
Oh,
of an obstacle.
I
But
feel the same way. I'm terrible drawing, and
yeah, and my
if I
son
could,
is.
I would do so much. Yeah.
Oh, right, right. I mean, I would put illustrations in my books. It would
Yeah,
be
yeah,
it'd be fantastic. I could add so much to it.
yeah.
My son's becoming a really good artist, so hopefully someday I'll be able to entice him into doing something for my book.
Nice, nice. Same
I
here.
uh,
Same here.
I offered to have him illustrate my last book, and I made him out a contract and everything. I gave him all the instructions. I was like, okay, this you do this for me. It'll take you like because all I wanted was little images for the top of every chapter that was like chapter
Yeah,
specific.
yeah.
But he's in sixth grade. He's got a million different things going on. So
Yeah.
every once in
Yeah,
a
he's
while,
got some time, so that's yeah.
right? Every once in a while, I'll go into his room and I'll find the contract in a different part of his floor.
I'm sure there's a future collaboration somewhere in there. I'm
I
sure.
hope so. He's getting really good. My
Wow.
dream for him is to become like a Bob Bacher. He wrote the Dinosaur Heresies, which is also one of my favorite books
Wow.
about
Okay.
just the 1980s era where they turned all the hypotheses or theories about the dinosaurs being slow lumbering creatures upside down. Bob Bacher was at the forefront of that. He did his own artistry in there, and it's not fair that you can be that good a writer and that good an artist at the same time and be an expert in your field. So I'm infinitely envious of Dr. Bacher.
Nice. Well, that I hope you find a collaboration somewhere. That those are the best situations where you
They
have
are, yeah.
just in it with you from the beginning, and
Yeah,
yeah, that'd be
I find
great.
a bunch of good artists on Reedsy. That's where I like to go. But again, that's another scenario where like, they spend 3 weeks working on a cover and they've got like a whole bunch of covers that they have to work on. So I mean, they don't have time for a project like that. And that's freelancing on top of their actual job somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So that is very time consuming, probably to do a whole book.
Oh yeah, I can't
Yeah,
imagine. I know it takes long enough just to write one.
yeah. So you're working on book one now of the trilogy?
Yes, book one is
Okay.
fittingly titled "The End of the Trilogy is a Hero." Naturally, the beginning of the beginning of the series has to be a villain, and that's the way it's
Nice.
set up. It's a character who has all the gifts, but is frustrated by humanity. So that kind of dims his view of people, and it's kind of his redemption arc.
Nice. All right, I look forward to that then. How far along are you with that? It's going to be a while still.
It's probably going to be a while. I normally set I usually tell myself, you can write this book in a year, and it's never a year. I end up starting, getting fairly well along, stopping, pausing just to gather myself again, and finding something else to do, and then coming back to it once my enthusiasm meter has refilled. But I'm still very excited about this book. So we'll see how long we push through, but maybe next year, hopefully. I would The most daunting part of the task isn't necessarily writing about it, it's thinking to myself how long it's going to take me to write it. I mean, everything is there. I just need to sit down and do it, and I know it's going to be a long process.
You
It's
know
an
how a
enjoyable
book
process,
ends.
but
You know where it goes. Yep.
I know where I mean, I've had a long time to think about this. So yeah, I've got everything pretty much in place. It's just getting it down on paper and getting it to a point where I like it. I mean, it's first draft is easy, but getting it to where it's enjoyable to read and write and still surprises me. Um, and that's an important part about my writing. If it doesn't surprise me, and I lose interest in it, and that makes it more difficult to write.
Well, I think one of my favorite pieces by you is Machines and Their Humans. And you granted my wish. I had wished that this was in paperback so I could reread it, and you just reissued it in paperback. So thank you for that. That's
I honestly should have given you a credit in there. I am sorry that I did not. I really, really should have.
No, that's okay. I'm going to get a copy of that, and that might be the one I assign to a university class in the fall. We'll see. I'm still going to pick one, but that book, that was a collection of stories. The one that really was a historical mind bender for me was the All Rivers Flow to the Sea.
Yes.
That one uh, really played around with a lot there, and I appreciate the. I think in a couple of your books you have those afterwards where you bring in the author notes and
Yeah, yeah, that was one. Normally, I don't do that because I feel like people can figure this stuff out for myself. But that one had stories in it where I absolutely wanted people to have no question about what I was going for. And I mean, they're not terribly complex ideas, but I wanted there to be no mistaking what my goal was with those. So I just wrote, a couple paragraphs at the end of each story.
yeah, I think that helped. I mean, I think it was nice like after reading a great story like that, it's nice to get the author's perspective on what went into that. So I think that's a nice addition. And I really get a sense too that you have a philosophy book in you somewhere. I mean, do you write any nonfiction? Do you have any
I
interest in
think
doing it?
I think if you read enough of my fiction, the philosophy is there to be grabbed. I mean,
It
it's
does come through. Yeah,
it's right
yeah,
there. I mean, if you stuck your hand into it and pulled your hand up,
yeah.
there would be a webbing of philosophy there somewhere.
So you'd rather keep it in the fiction, though, keep it in the art.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty consistent in terms of what my philosophy is. In fact, in Millennium Man, it's very blatant because I come right out and quote Carl Sagan. I mean, if you want a book of philosophy for me to refer you to, it'd probably be Cosmos.
Yeah, yeah.
Cosmos is my
Great book.
philosophy.
Classic.
Yep. Yeah, we're a self-destructive species with so much potential.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's just a matter of balancing that.
Nice, nice. This one was really different in your catalog.
Yeah,
Sexist
that's
Sentence.
probably gonna jump out at you on a bookshelf. If you go
Yeah.
looking at my books.
So this was a new release, right? 2024. And hilarious names of characters. Wild plot. Just and really, would you consider this like a historical parody?
I
That
would, I needed a framework to hang this parody on. And yeah, history is one of my favorite things. So I mean that was an easy one for me. But the whole impetus behind that was again in my early career when I was trying to market The Speaker for the Trees, I was looking around for somebody to give that book to, and everybody wants romance, everybody wants thriller or mystery, and I was so frustrated by that. So I was like, you know what? I can write a romantic, sexy thriller. And I mean, obviously my spin on that was to just make fun of the whole genre. I mean, no disrespect to the genre, but that's how I do when I am envious of something. I will poke fun at it. And that was the result. That was Successions was actually a book that I had the idea for right around the same time as I published, or before I published The Speaker for the Trees. And I had actually worked, this is actually in the author's note at the end. I actually worked with a friend of mine on a screenplay for it. And it just sort of fell apart. I mean, we were so busy with other stuff. And for whatever reason, I just came back to it a few years ago. I was like, you know what? I really want to put this out. I want to finish this story. This is a story that I find amusing. This is a story where I'm in the shower doing nothing, and my brain is just like cycling along, and this is where it always ends up on. So I have to make room for other things. I need to get this out of here.
Gotta get it out. Yeah, move it
Right.
out. That's yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I really like the story, but due to its mature content, it's not overtly sexual or graphic or anything. It's more ridiculous, but just because it has that overtone to it, it makes it more difficult to market to a wider audience.
Sure.
I mean, I don't think if you look up my name on Amazon, it doesn't even show the book. You have to go to my author page
Oh,
on
really? It doesn't
Amazon.
even register, huh?
Yeah, because I think it's 18 plus, and that
Uh,
doesn't show up there. You've got to do a very specific search for it. So,
I don't remember anything too graphic in it, though. I mean, I've read way more. I mean,
I
that's
mean, I think childish would be a better term for it than graphic.
yeah, it's well, and I noticed there's another cover for this too, that's now out of print. Was that a special edition version
Yeah,
that you
that was
did?
that was one of the first covers,
I
and
kind of regret not getting that one. I'm like, oh, but I really wanted this one though too because the illustration was.
that was yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this is the one I pulled the trigger on. I went for this one. So it
I
was a tough
had
choice though. At the time, I had the choice. Which one do
yeah,
I
yeah.
buy? And this
I
is the
had I had the other cover, the black and white one done,
one with
and
the
I was just
woman on
like,
it.
yeah, and I was like,
Yeah.
this is literally what I asked the artist for, and I'm just
Wow.
not feeling it. I mean, I
Okay.
don't this isn't 100% what I want. And he did a great job. He did
Sure.
exactly what I asked him to. But then I was poking around on Reedsy again, and I found another artist, and I really what is his name? Oh no, do I not
Gareth.
have do I not
Gareth.
read? Gareth, yes.
Gareth Southwell.
Gareth Southwell. And he did some artwork, and I looked through his portfolio, and it's very reminiscent of that kind of stuff. I mean, just weirdly disproportionate bodies.
That's
And I was like,
great.
do you think you'd be interested in doing a cover like that? He's like, yeah, that sounds amazing. What kind of ideas do you have? So I tossed him a couple of ideas, and I don't remember if he or I came up with the idea of the portfolio, the because I sent him a couple excerpts from the story. No, it wasn't even excerpts. I sent him the whole story. He asked for the whole story, and he blew through it in like 3 days. And he's
Wow.
like, I've got a great idea. That's what it was. Like, I got a
Okay.
great idea for the cover. What do you think of this? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Please do that. And I mean, he blew it out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, this is award-winning cover art. I mean, it's
He does.
amazing. Even the
It's
back. Look at the
actually
back. I
the
mean,
amazing.
that's
I mean, he put
brilliant.
all of that together based on the
Yeah,
book. I mean, apart from the summary, I did that, but he put the whole portfolio
sure.
together and everything. And it actually pains me to know that he took a book quote and put it over part of the description because, out of necessity, that's where he had to put it. That did the
Sure.
least damage. But I mean, it hurts me to know that I had to cover up some of his art.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind that, I mentioned writing that screenplay with my friend Jeff. That's actually a reference to the back of the book. If you look down there at the back
That's
of the
right.
book.
Don't you dare put my name on this, Jeff.
Yeah, I because I had kind of co-written it with him.
Yeah.
I asked him, I was like, "Hey Jeff, I want to write, I want to finish writing this book. Do you, I mean, I don't know whose ideas were whose, because we wrote maybe the equivalent of like 3 or 4 chapters together, essentially, the content for that. And I diverted from that somewhat, but I was like, I don't remember what ideas were yours and what were mine. So do you want like a co-author credit? And I mean, like instantly, like almost as soon as I had pressed enter, he's like, no, no, it's yours. Like almost like, please don't involve me in this whatsoever. That's how I interpreted it. So naturally, I told him that, and he thought that was funny. So I decided that to turn that into a whole shtick. Like he wanted, please don't tell anyone I'm involved in this. Please don't put my name on this. Nothing. Like he didn't say that, but that's what I quoted him as saying just to run the joke along. So yes, that's of that entire 150-page long book, my favorite part is the inside joke.
Nice, nice. Well, we didn't get to your newest book, but I think I want to carve some time out sometime soon and have you come back on and let's talk about monsters.
Oh yeah,
That's
yes,
the
I would.
newest one that's about to it just hit actually. I have it in the mail on the way, so
That's awesome. Yes,
excited to
yeah,
read that.
this
So
was fun. I would be more than happy to do this a second or third or fourth time.
nice, nice. Well, let's definitely get in and talk a little bit more about your books, the new release, and your philosophy, and we'll get into some good stuff. So thanks so much for taking the time, Sean.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to coming back.
And I hope everybody checks out your books. They're worthy reads.
Me too. Please buy my books.